Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Monday, March 25th, and we're back live. We've been out of the office for the last Thursday and Friday of last week. Had some continuing education every year. We have what we call the Midwinter Conference. That's right here, put on by our Texas Chiropractic Association, and we have it here in Lubbock. Thanks to some hard work of some of the old timers that had said, "Hey, we shouldn't have to go to Austin every single day to do all this stuff." So maybe you guys could have a conference out here for us. And so they did that, and they've been doing it. And this weekend was the conference, and there were some functions going on Thursday night, and then we had some stuff going on Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday morning. So that's what I did this weekend, and that's why I was off on Thursday and Friday. But we're glad to be back tonight. We hope you guys had a great weekend. It was a super busy weekend for me, and a lot of my minutes were occupied, which I love those times a lot of times. But there are some things that we don't get done, and like one of them is I didn't get to make it to church on Sunday because I was listening to migraines lecture, and Jesus knew where I was. I'm not worried about it, but we can't do take health to church tonight. So, I'll see if I could catch up on that that sermon at some point this week, and if I can, then maybe we'll bring health to church on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because that's really the whole point of taking health to church, is that you should be able to do it every single day. Church is supposed to carry over in all the days of the week. And so we're really, maybe if we get that done, we'll do that. So what I'm going to do in its place, because the sermon I got yesterday was about migraines, and I got it from a fourth generation chiropractor, who is one of the absolute leading experts in migraines in any profession, I would argue. Definitely in our profession, but in any profession. And the guy was sharp. He's a chiropractic neurologist. He's a fourth generation chiropractor, and he's written a book. He does a I don't even know how many hours it is, a long seminar series on migraines, and he just kind of gave us an overview of 3 days worth. So that's what I thought I'd bring to you today, because that's the sermon I got yesterday. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about migraines. I'm going to give you some information that I bet you didn't know, because I didn't know it, and it's going to be it'll be fun to talk about. Before we get to it, I want to talk about our supplement of the day, and I'm bringing you two of them again. One's for males, one's for females, but it's basically the same thing. It's called Simplex. Simplex F for females, Simplex M for males. It is a I'll just read it to you. It's just support, basically. So the Simplex F for females is a supplement for women's health, which contains a proprietary protomorphogen blend. PMGs contain a unique profile of nucleotides and peptides from bovine, ovary, adrenal, pituitary, and thyroid. And on the males, it says Simplex S is a supplement for men's health, which contains a proprietary blend, a protomorphogen blend. PMGs contain a unique profile. The same thing. It says exactly the same thing, but it just is built a little bit different for the males than it is for the females. And remember, those protomorphogens are kind of decoys that we can get some of our immune system off just for a little bit of any of our organs. And we also use this. The reason that I thought it was kind of cool to bring this up is because it's part of our nutritional program that we run in the office whenever we do a heart sound recorder, or we do your symptom survey and your heart rate variability. Whenever we're using those, if we get a person who really needs some sympathetic support, their sympathetic nervous system is being driven down and becoming fatigued, then this is what we would use, is to try to help them with their sympathetic nervous system. So a lot of that information we get on your symptom survey when it's a questionnaire that we will give to you when we do your nutritional evaluation, and it gives us it's a a subjective evaluation because you're filling it out. It's not the symptom survey is all subjective. It's not objective, but you're the one that knows how you feel about a lot of things, and whether or not you're sleeping at night, whether or not you've got itchy skin, whether or not you've got trouble with digestion, if you're having trouble with anxiety, all those questions. There's several questions. I don't know, 150 maybe on this that are just answered in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the scale. Whether or not yes, it's prevalent, no, it's not prevalent, whatever. So when we get that information back, and then we run your heart rate variability, and then we run your heart sound recorder, we get a pretty good picture of what's going on with you, and we can kind of tell that hey, that sympathetic nervous system is getting low. You're not responding to fight or flight. That's not good, because it's almost always after your parasympathetic nervous system gives up. So your rest and recover already gave up. Then as your sympathetic fight or flight response starts to give up, now you get into that wrong quadrant, and you end up there, and you end up with some sort of disease process or pathology. So we don't want you going in that direction. So Simplex F, one for females, one for males, and that's the supplement of the day. So you guys can remember, you can get it from us here at The Rock. You can get it on therock.standardprocess.com if you want to go get it for yourself. I always recommend that you talk to us before you buy it from the website, but it's not 100% required. And I want to say one more thing, because the show that's for you guys on social media, the show that's on right before us is called Pratt on Texas, and it's on the radio station, and he does a great job of breaking down politics and headlines and all that sort of thing that's going on in the state of Texas, and he's been doing it for a long, long time, and he's really, really good at it. You guys on the radio, obviously, you know that, but you guys that are watching through social media. So when I get on to this show, I get the blessing of getting to hear the last few minutes of Pratt on Texas. If I can get finished with patients quick enough and get over here and just make sure everything's running right, then I'll come in and I'll do that. Well, today he was talking about a lawsuit with a doctor that got sued because she recommended ivermectin for her patients, and the FDA came after her, and she won her case or whatever, and I guess she's settled with the FDA with prejudice, or however that goes. But he was just talking about and one of the things that she's in trouble for in Texas is treating patients without doing an exam. And one patient, apparently, I don't know all the details about it, but it just kind of reminded me to just remember to all the people that listen to the show, I'm not treating your symptoms because I haven't established a doctor-patient relationship between you and I. I have to establish that relationship before I could be actually treating something. And then I have a responsibility to do my due diligence so that I make sure that I do the right thing by you. And those are just common laws in every state. They're common laws in Texas. They're common laws amongst human beings as far as that goes. So I just want you to know the information. When we're talking about stuff on this show, I'm just talking to you about information that can help you. I'm not trying to be your doctor. Now, some of you that listen to the show, obviously, I am your doctor, and I appreciate you listening to the show all the time. And when we talk about stuff, we talk about stuff on the radio. We talk about stuff while you're working out in the gym. We talk about stuff while you come in and get adjusted and all that sort of thing. So that's something that I just wanted to make sure that we are very clear for all you guys who are not patients of mine. I'm not specifically treating your condition. I'm not diagnosing your condition. I'm not treating your condition. I'm simply talking about wellness, talking about things that people do to be well, and that's what we've always done. So it just kind of reminded me while I was listening to the back end of that Robert Pratt show that maybe you ought to bring that up one more time just so that everybody understands it. Which just reminded me of one of my patients who's also a listener, uh, that she just started with us, and she's a hoot of a lady, uh, and and she was telling me last week when she came in, she was like, she listens to the show on the radio, and then when it first came on, she was like, "Who is this guy?" And she said she had to ask Ken at the radio station, "Hey, is he legit or what? Like, what is this show all about? What does this guy come on the radio just talk for? And is he just?" And I said, "Well, what'd you think?" And she said, "Well, I actually thought you were a nerd or something that just read off some paper." I said, "Well, you probably got most of that right. Like the nerd part, I'm totally fine with that. Like I probably am. I probably am a nerd. It's for all you guys listening on the radio, and all you guys that are watching on the social media people. I think get a little bit better grasp of it because they could see me and they could see what we're doing here in the office and they can see the office. But all you guys on the radio, it's a little bit more difficult. And I was talking to my friends from Roswell this weekend. They came into town, MJ and Kati, and in a CrossFit, and they won the CrossFit competition. So good for them. To those New Mexico kids coming over here and dominating the CrossFit program. So I was proud of them for that. But I was talking to him and I said, "Hey, if you're ever thinking about doing a combined radio show and a social media show, don't do it. It's complicated." And they both laughed. But I love it. I love doing it. There are challenges when you're trying to do two things at once. You're trying to do a live social media show and you're trying to do a radio show at the same time. And it's the formats are a little different. And for you guys listening on the radio, what I really was trying to do with this, because in the last few years, things have just changed. They've changed. There's a lot more shows. There's a lot more infomercials, like Dr. Huberman and Huberman Labs, right? So we talk about him. You guys on the radio, you guys know it. We talk about him a lot, and so, but like if you wanted to go to Huberman Labs, and if I viewed his channel on YouTube, he's got 5.23 million subscribers, and he's got 210 videos. And this one that he's got that just came out, How We See and Curing Blindness, is 2 hours long. It's a 2 hour conversation. Last week we talked about Dr. Zucker, right? And Dr. Zucker's it was an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. If I just go through this is 2 hours and 51 minutes. This is 58 minutes. It's 2 hours, 256, 118, 56. This one right here, 3 hours and 42 minutes with Dr. Paul Condi. Assess your mental health. 3 hours and 42 minutes. And so what I know is that there's a lot of people out there who hunger for a real conversation that lasts, like that, like they could really get into. And so the format on the radio is really it's not the normal format that the radio stations usually get into, because radio is so much sound, right? It always has been sound. So they've got a different format where you have a very short period of time, then you get a set of commercials, you got some music going on and all that sort of thing. And I get it. So, but Victor and Ken and Bob and those guys, they've been gracious enough to let us try this format on the radio, and just so we can have, and I just said, "Hey, look, can I figure out a way we could get 25 minutes and then you could do the commercials and then we get 25 more minutes or 26, and that way we got time to talk about things if we want to." And they've been gracious enough to do that. And so I think we're just about to finish our 7th month of doing it, and we're trying to get better at it. But that's the point. That's the point of the show. If you're wondering why, who am I? Come to our Facebook page. Go to the Walk by Faith Facebook page and watch a few of the videos. And so at least you can kind of get an idea. I invite you guys to do that who are listening to us on the radio. I invite you to come and listen, because yes, I am a nerd. I'm fine with that. And some of the stuff I am reading off of, but a lot of it, it's just stuff that I'm trying to bring to you so that you can have a healthier life. That's the whole point. You can have a healthier life, and not only have a healthier life, but be educated enough so that when people start talking about stuff, Like all of a sudden, the new thing that's like within the last couple of weeks is castor oil, rubbing castor oil or putting castor oil patches on you. Okay, fine. I don't know if castor oil works or castor oil doesn't work. I haven't done any research on it. I can't tell you whether it works, but I can tell you it's become super popular. And now all of a sudden, people are just going to want to put castor oil all over themselves. Whether it's true or it's false, we get pushed into that. Ozempic came along, bam, everybody takes the shot. Here we go with hot and cold tubs, cold tub therapy, bam, everybody's doing the cold tub therapy, right? We don't know why we're doing it. We're just doing it because everybody else did it. At least if you listen to the show for any period of time, you can start to get at least some foundation that builds your health on the rock, is what the whole point of this office is. You can get some foundation of the things that are are a little bit more solid for you so that you can build your health on the rock, so that you can, when you hear something, you have some sort of filtering system that maybe you got something from listening to us on the show. So that's what we're doing, and the guys on the radio, maybe you could come follow us on social media, and we'll go from there. So let's get into the topic of the evening, and it's migraines, and what an interesting topic. So this guy that spoke to us on Sunday morning, actually, and it's a hard deal to do, to stick around on Sunday morning uh, and speak at a conference, because most of the guys have already gotten their hours. They're out of there, and so it's just the diehard people that actually stick around on Sunday morning are the ones that are forced to stick around. So for me personally, I was one of those diehard guys that stuck around on Sunday morning. Only went to 2 lectures because I've already done my continuing education with the laser stuff that we've talked about multiple times. And so I got my continuing education hours. We have to have 16 hours every year. And I got my hours with that already. And so I decided to, there was 2 people I wanted to listen to. Um, and the first one on Saturday, her name is Alicia Yoakum, and she's the daughter of Dr. Terry Yoakum, who is he wrote the textbook on radiology. I mean, he is the expert. My textbooks that I have in the office that I got in chiropractic school that I still use to this day are called Yoakum and Rowe, and Dr. Yoakum is the one that wrote that book. I don't know. I've never met Dr. Rowe, but they wrote that book in radiology, and his daughter is a chiropractor. She's a nurse. She's a chiropractor. She's a diplomate in radiology, and she has a couple of other things. She's also certified in ultrasound, which is so cool because I didn't. She asked us if anybody knew what that meant, and I didn't raise my hand because I wasn't exactly sure what she was talking about. But once she described it, it's that same thing that my friend in Ruidoso has, Dr. Fraley, that's got the ultrasound where he can actually look at your shoulder and see if you have a torn rotator cuff. We can look at a knee and see if you've got a torn ligament in the knee. He can do an ultrasound of your heart, of your liver, all your vessels, your vessels in your neck. You can do that as well. And so um, she's a certified in all that stuff too. So she was super sharp, and we'll talk about some of the radiology stuff later. But I went back on Sunday morning because I wanted to hear this guy. His name's Adam Harcourt, Harcourt. He's a 4th-generation chiropractor, super smart guy. That 4th-generation chiropractor means his dad was a chiropractor, his granddad was a chiropractor, and his great-granddad was a chiropractor. And that probably takes it all the way back to the beginning of chiropractic right there. So there's a long line right there. And this dude was just like, it was awesome. He did a great job. He's a chiropractic neurologist, means he's got his diplomate in neurology and in functional nutrition and a couple other things. So super smart guy, and he talked about migraines. So the first question he asked us, he said, "What is a migraine?" If you guys were going to describe what a migraine is, and you were going to write it down, how would you describe it? And it was like, okay, well, so we all kind of wrote down our definition. Then he said, here, we're going to come back at the end of the lecture, and we're going to talk to you about migraines. And he gave us some facts, and some of the facts that he gave us is migraines is the sixth most common cause of disability on the planet. The number one disability on the planet is low back pain. And it was when it comes to costing money. But the migraines is the sixth, but it is the most common neurological disorder in the United States and accounts for approximately 14 billion in direct, and indirect cost annually, 27 pounds in the EU. So 27 billion. So 14 billion direct and indirect cost is what it costs us with migraines. It affects about 38 million people in the United States, including 4 million chronic headache sufferers, and there are more than 1 billion patients having an attack in any year. Estimates from the International Burden of Migraine Studies suggested that the average 3-month headache-related costs were about $1,000 and $1,036 and $383 for chronic and episodic migraine, respectively. So if you have chronic migraines, then you're spending about a 3-month cost of $1,036, right? The mean total annual headache-related costs were significantly greater for patients with chronic migraines than those with episodic migraines, $8,000, $8,200. So if you've got a migraine, and you're a migraine sufferer, man, what a challenging thing you've got right there, right? Because that's tough. It'll knock you down. And I think in my notes, it was, let me see if I can find exactly, less than 15 migraines in a month is considered episodic. More than 15 migraines is considered chronic. So can you imagine 20 migraines? For you guys that suffer from migraines out there, that's horrible. 20 migraines in a month, man, 2/3 of the month you're having a migraine, and it's horrible, and it can knock you down, and it's not good at all. So that's where he got into that, and he asked us. But one thing that I wanted to share with you tonight is what I learned this weekend is that what Dr. Harcourt explained to us is that migraines are genetic, and that was the first time that I really had that completely described to me and explained to me. And you know how I am about genetics. I'm like, I don't necessarily, I'm not buying down the whole idea that everything gets passed down genetically. But in this particular case, what he's actually talking about is he's talking about some ion channels. And these ion channels is the way that an ion channel helps you move things like calcium or potassium across the cell membrane of a cell. And to make it kind of, to try to make it as understood as possible. So I'll just read some of these points right here. Ion channels are pore-forming P-O-R-E, pore-forming transmembrane proteins that allow the passage of ions into and out of a cell. So you're going to move these things in and out of a cell. If you have the resting cell membrane is what is normal inside a cell. When you look at magnesium, calcium, sodium, the different types of ions that are around the cell, you have more negative cells inside, negatively charged cells inside than you do on the outside, which makes the inside of the cell resting at about -75. So and what happens, and I won't get into the whole physiology of an action potential, but what happens is you basically have to take that cell and move it down to 0, and then all of a sudden you get this firing pattern. But what he taught us this weekend, and what he really broke down for us, is that the resting membrane potential in a migraine patient is about -55. So in a normal cell, and he's talking about nerve cells in the brain, right? We're talking about nerve cells. This normal resting potential is about -75, But if you're a migraine sufferer, it's negative 55, which means it's closer to zero, which means you have a quicker a quicker time frame to reaching that action potential and setting that nerve off. And he says the reason for this is that those ion channels actually genetically have a problem in the way that they were developed. And depending on exactly which ion channel you're dealing with, you can actually get you have your migraines. And so what he explained is that if you're a migraine sufferer, you're always susceptible to being a migraine sufferer. And I didn't know that. I thought it would. Well, it didn't matter what I thought. That's just what I didn't know that. I didn't know that was something that you would have for all the time. So the question is, what is it that we can do to help you if you're a migraine sufferer so that you don't have all these chronic migraines? So when we get back from the break, we'll break it down. We'll get into the nutrition of it. We'll get into the some of the stress things that we can do, some of the things you could do when you have a migraine versus beforehand. To avoid a migraine, there's some supplements you can take. And if you're in the middle of a migraine, there's some supplements you can take. So you guys stick around. We'll be right back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, so that was something that was new to me, that it was genetic, and that so you've got that, they got that ion pump, that ion channel problem for the rest of your life. So basically what you have to do is you have to expand your capacity to deal with your stress in order to keep that cell closer over there to that 55 range than closer to zero. And that's doable because I've lived with a migraine sufferer. Leslie has migraines. She had migraines multiple for years. I mean, obviously, based on what Dr. Harcourt told us, she's genetically predisposed to having migraines, so she'll suffer from them forever. And I asked her after this yesterday afternoon. I said, "Hey, like, how long? When's the last time you had a migraine?" And she said, "I don't think I've had a migraine in about 2 years." And that was a good statement, because that's when we quit eating sugar. And that's one of the things that's one of the things that you can do is control your blood sugar. And I'll get to that as we get to these slides, but controlling your blood sugar is a big thing. So what you do is you basically build a capacity to handle it. And if you look into that research up there, and you talk about migraines is the sixth most common cause of disability on the planet, but actually there was another on the survey that they did, or the study that they did. If you move down to about number 15 or something, it had something to do with missing work because of over medication or having some issue with medication. And it turns out that if you add those two things together, migraines become the second most common cause. It's when it's combined with medication overuse. So let me get us back on the radio. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons. You're listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we're talking about migraines tonight. So what I said a while ago is it's the sixth most common cause of disability, but when you combine it with medication overuse headache, which is primarily from migraine patients, it becomes the second most disabling problem on the planet. So number one would being low back pain, which chiropractors are the experts in that, and number two is migraine. So it's like, wow, let's take care of these 38 million people that's got migraines. So that was an interesting piece of information. And so you got these ion channels, you got these cells that are hyper excitable. They reach excitability too quickly, and now they're going to fire, and then you're going to end up with whatever the problem is right there. And what basically happens is in your brain state, you have that's why we always go back to the brain, right? We're always talking about the brain. You have healthy neurons in the brain, and then you have just weaker neurons in the brain. And because of these ion channels, that's what causes this particular nerve just to be weaker. And we know it in the same thing when we talk about if we're talking about a pain syndrome. If someone said something about low back and it was a low back problem, well, we know that the way that that nerve is firing is not firing properly. Remember, low back is secondary to brain. It's brain first, then it's low back. It's not low back first. That's why I keep trying to share that with you. It's your brain first. Your brain's not working, then your low back quits working. Because now these cells, these nerve cells that are in these pathways between your brain and your low back, they become weaker. And we know that's true. And in a healthy person, they stay strong and active and firing like they're supposed to. But in a migraine person, when we look at the migraine, and he said, everybody understands it from low back pain, but if you talk about it from migraine, they're like, nah, I don't think I buy that. Well, it's factual. It's the same way. So what do we got? We got a weaker nerve system, and we've got a set of genetics based on which one of these genetic SNPs that you have will cause the type of the migraine that you might get yourself into. And for you guys that are watching it on social media, you can look at that one right there. So this is a breakdown of where you get into the facial nerve and you start having issues with your face and the brain stem. And it's not really argued that there's an issue with the part of your brain stem that ends up you having these problems. You end up having this dilation. You get this sympathetic response. You have this dilation of these blood vessels. These blood vessels dilate. They hit these nerves. It causes all kinds of pain. There's your headache right there. That's why you put ice on the back of your neck. Put ice on the back of your neck, or you can actually put ice on the front of your neck, because that's what you're trying to do when you're trying to knock a headache down like that. If you put ice on the back of your neck, you're constricting that blood supply a little bit. You're trying to constrict it, right? Which takes the pressure off of the nerve. Just imagine the nerve being wrapped around something. So just imagine the nerve is wrapped around on the outside of the blood vessel, and now the blood vessel expands because you're having a sympathetic response, and then you press against the nerve on the outside and you end up with the headache. But what Dr. Harcourt was trying to explain to us is that, okay, we know that this particular area in the brainstem is having a problem, but he was trying to show us how many different areas in the brain feed into that one particular area in the brainstem, which ends up causing our problems with our blood vessels. So it was a good little the locus coeruleus, the periaqueductal gray, with some of those things that we talk about, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and then up into the cortex, the occipital lobe, up into different parts of the cortex itself. And we talk about that. Remember, you may have heard me say that word locus coeruleus. And locus coeruleus is what gets activated in the stress response that pours that adrenaline all over your brain. That adrenaline, as we know, is the right brain has an affinity for that. Remember, we talked about that. So it's a pretty good pathways to say, hey, look, how can we control that? How can we control what's going on to this nucleus? How can we control what's going on to the thalamus and the hypothalamus and the different regulatory things that are going on with that? And what are some of those neurotransmitters that are firing down that might set that off? And that's his whole point. Is like, look, we have to be better adaptable to our environment. We have to make ourselves more flexible to our environment. He uses a bucket analogy. You got to make your bucket bigger so that you can handle things better, so that it doesn't just overflow the bucket all at once. You got to make the bucket bigger. And there's ways that you could do that if you understand the different parts of the brain and the different parts of the brain that are contributing to your migraines. So I thought that was great. So one of them up here is how it modulates your hypothalamus, and we talk about adrenal fatigue from a stress response. And you guys may have heard this before, and we talk about it with Drenamine and adrenal desiccated. The adrenal fatigue in a migraine person is not so much coming, according to Dr. Harcourt, it's not so much coming from the fact that the adrenal glands are fatigued. It's coming from the brain centers above the adrenal glands that are trying to down-regulate their response. And so that's one of the things we get this hypothalamic modulation is because of how that part is trying to modulate the different areas and the mechanisms that are related to a migraine. And so we get into autonomic dysfunction. Classical migraine studies have already noted that frontal branches of the superficial temporal artery may be dilated on the side of the headache. So the blood vessel dilates. Likewise, possible local asymmetry of forehead blood flow has been reported in the affected side of the migraineur's, I never said that word before, face during an attack. It was also reported that that in the interictal period, that means between the headaches, when you're not having a headache, the pupil of the symptomatic side dilated more slowly and less extensively in the darkness than the opposite pupil, indicating asymmetry of sympathetic outflow. And that's one of the things that we do test here in the office with the Reflex app. And we test your pupils, and we can kind of see which pupil is firing properly and which pupil is not firing properly. And that gives us information about your autonomic nervous system and how it goes. And so you guys on the social media can see this page. It was super cool. This is actually I can't see it. I can't play it. But this whole thing, the picture on the left this is a thermography picture. And so it's measuring heat. So more blood in the area, more heat, right? And so what it showed was for a normal person, when they had on the heartbeat, and they showed exactly how the blood perfused into the brain, it would show it. The whole thing would light up all at the same time. It was completely symmetrical in the way that the face lit up with heat. But in the picture on the right, so we've got a picture on the right, and the person on the right, when it showed the heartbeat, it went up on the right and then it moved across to the left. Actually, this person's looking back at us. So it started up on the left and then it moved itself across to the right. It was so different between these two pictures. The way that the blood flow flowed across is the way that it was like, oh, look, it took it a minute before it got over there on that side. And so what it's basically saying is that the way that one side of our brain is functioning and the way that the other side of our brain is functioning is two different ways. And so when the blood comes up into the brain, it hits those blood vessels that are open before it hits the blood vessels that are closed, and it takes it a minute to get across. So one of the things we could do is we can check your blood pressure on both sides of you. We could take a blood pressure on your right side and take a blood pressure on your left side. We could take oxygen saturation with the pulse ox on the right side and the left side. And if we have a major difference between those two, it gives us an idea about, hey, maybe this side of the brain is not quite functioning the way it's supposed to. Then we can look in the eyes and see what's going on with the eyes, and that gives us an area to try to narrow down where you're having your dysfunction and then what we can do about it, right? So I'm going to get down. So we basically are going to work through. So let's talk about nutritional considerations for people who are dealing with migraines. And the the first one, and he said, the first one he said, he's like, you're going to get people mad at you for this. So just be prepared because nobody's popular when they talk about caffeine. And that's one of the things that is like, if you're a migraine sufferer, the caffeine is got to go. The caffeine is causing you problems. The main finding of our study is that the complete cessation of daily caffeine intake is independently associated with the excellent efficacy of acute treatment of migraines. A negative dose-dependent relationship was found between the daily caffeine intake and the efficacy of the acute migraine medications in multiple aspects. So what that means is the more caffeine you got, the less it works, and the work goes that way. Caffeine results in an increased release of excitatory neurotransmitters through the competitive inhibition of adenosine receptors and vasoconstriction via A2 receptor antagonists or cerebral blood vessels. And you don't know what that means, but it just means that it changes the neurotransmitters in your brain, the excitatory neurotransmitters of your brain. Excitatory gets these nerves to fire quicker, right? We don't want them to do that. We want them to stay chill. Although caffeine cessation might be beneficial in migraine treatment, it can be complicated by caffeine withdrawal and headache. And so what happens when you get off of caffeine? And when I quit coffee, this happened to me. Okay? And if you know it before you start, you're way better off. You got a better chance of getting through it, because here's the typical thing that happens when you're trying to get off caffeine. You can say, okay, I'm going to start on a Monday. Well, on day one, it starts this arc. Day one is not so bad, but day two gets worse, and then day three typically is the worst day of all. So you're going to have a withdrawal when you try to quit caffeine. So if you start on a Monday, what's going to happen is Monday's not going to be so bad, but then Tuesday's going to be worse, and by Wednesday you're feeling so miserable and you got such a horrible headache by that time that you're just ready to give up. But so what Dr. Harcourt kind of recommended for us, he's like, look, if you got somebody trying to get off of caffeine, it might be a good idea to start them on a Thursday. Let that day one be a Thursday, then day two be a Friday, and then day three be a Saturday. And then that's going to be your worst day. But most of the time we're off work and we're at home, and we can handle that Saturday better. We're going to have a horrible headache on that day. Mine just happened to be that same night. Mine went straight to 1. And then I kind of went downhill when I quit coffee. It went downhill dramatically. So that day, day 3, if you can make it on a Saturday, then Sunday, day 4 is going to be a little bit better. And then by the time you're back to Monday, then you've gone through that withdrawal. So that might be something that's helpful to kind of learn about that. So when it comes to diet, when we're talking about diet, what has been found to be pretty significant is a ketogenic diet. And that's something that is where you want to eat meat and vegetables, and a ketogenic diet specifically is talking about having your glucose and having your carb count at a certain level, throughout the day where it's super low. What Dr. Harcourt's talking about is keeping you're eating a more meat-based diet, but you're staying away from refined carbohydrates a lot. And you can eat some vegetables. You can eat some fruits and vegetables. This is the same thing we talk about, right? Because the main thing that you're doing with this is you're controlling your blood sugar. You want to control your blood sugar. You don't want these big spikes of insulin that's happening right there. So this study also confirms that before the ketogenic diet, short-term interventions, the migraine patients lacked habituation in response to visual and somatosensory repetitive stimulus. So they had a hard time with the sensory, like you get all of these sensory things that set you off when you're dealing with migraines. There's a bunch of those things that people think that whether it's somebody's it's smell, it's lights. Like they have a hard time with lights. You guys that are dealing with migraines, you know that that there's like sometimes it's dust or allergies that'll set you off. And then he gets into this one here. He's like um, evidence several evidences correlate migraine attacks to the consumption of trigger foods such as wine, citrus fruits, cheese, coffee, and chocolate. All these products contain phenols and polyphenols that, at a biochemical level, act as inhibitors of this, what's called sulfotransferase enzymes. So you're not handling your sulfur properly. And one of the things that he made very clear is it's not the food that's the problem. It's the inability of you to be able to handle your environment. You're already setting on tilt before you take these foods. So some people think, no, it's definitely chocolate. I can never eat chocolate again. That's what Dr. Harcourt's going to say is it's not that's not true. It's whether or not we can get your body to expand its adaptability and be able to handle those things at a greater level. That's what we really want to try to accomplish, is give that to you in a way that you can function at a higher, you've got more adaptability. So some of the things that set it off: red wine, red and white wine, chocolate, coffee, citrus fruits, cheese, and alcohol. Those the other things, spirits. So those are all. That's where you get into that sulfur problem, and there's some things that we could do to help you with that as well. So the low glycemic index diet for migraine is preventative. That's what you want to do. You want to control your blood sugar, and you want to make sure that you're eating that low glycemic diet, which is just what, if you wonder what that means, we've been talking about it for 7 months. So you can go back and figure that out. Keep your blood sugar under control. Another thing is, don't be afraid so much of sodium, of salt. There actually is a little bit of this study here. 1999 to 2004 data provides the first evidence of an inverse association between migraine and dietary sodium intake. An inverse association means that as the sodium goes up, that the migraines go down, which seems like that's not true when we're dealing with those ion channels, and we want to be careful with that. But he said, hey, look, just maybe maybe the salt helps regulate things better than we think. So not a negative thing to be super worried about salt if you're a migraine sufferer. Obesity is something, no question. The heavier you are, the more problem you have with migraines. Among 32,835 participants with complete data, 34% reported no headaches, 44% non-migraine headache, and 22% migraine with or without aura during one's lifetime. In these groups, obesity was present in 11.6% respectively. It was the most out of those groups. So it studied a bunch of people and said, look, if we're heavy, we increase our chance for migraines, which means we make our bucket smaller and we lose our ability to adapt. So if we can get our weight under control, then we have a greater ability to adapt. So there's some things: gluten, dairy, caffeine, alcohol, chocolates, citrus fruits. Those are items that most likely you're going to want to avoid. Supplements. There's some things that will help in the realm of supplements before, to try to prevent your headaches. Number one was some B vitamins, and it was specific B vitamins at specific amounts. So 6 months of daily vitamin supplementation, 2 milligrams of folic acid, 25 milligrams of vitamin B6, and 400 micrograms of vitamin B12 reduced the prevalence of migraine disability from 60% at baseline to 30% after 6 months. Headache frequency and pain severity. So it decreased it. Whereas no reduction was observed for the placebo group. So there's one thing right there. Specific B6 and B12 vitamins will help. Folate, there's specific on the amount. So study 1 with folate, B9, vitamin supplementation, 2 milligrams of folic acid, 25 milligrams of vitamin B6, and 400 micrograms of vitamin B12. Reduced homocysteine by 39% compared with baseline, blah, blah, blah. Reduced the prevalence of migraine disability from 60 to 30. Then they did another study, and there was 1 milligram of folic acid, and the only thing they changed is they changed from 2 milligrams to 1 milligram, and it did not show a significant decrease in the percentage of participants with high migraine disability. So we've talked about this on this show multiple times, that the amount matters. The amount of it that we get matters. So sometimes you need a little bit more, sometimes you need a little bit less, but fish oil is the same way, right? It's the volume. We got to get the volume up in order to get the things that we need for there. Magnesium, 112.5 milligrams of magnesium per day for 3 months was shown to be helped. I don't know what butterbur is, but in the second class 1 study, migraine attacks frequently was reduced by 48% for butterbur extract at 75 milligrams twice a day, by 36% for it extract twice a day, and by 26% for the placebo group. So butterbur helps. CoQ10 helps, 100 milligrams 3 times a day is something that was helped. Feverfew, vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency was independently associated with an increased frequency of monthly headaches. And another one here is ginger. And a lot of you think that ginger helps, but what the research says is that ginger provides no greater benefit in the prophylactic treatment of migraines when compared to placebo. So the ginger is not helping you in that in-between headache time, but the ginger is helping you in the overall time. So, I mean, during a headache. Ginger definitely has been shown to help you during a headache. If you do respond to ginger, you're going to respond during the headache. Sometimes nothing helps during the headache, but there's a supplement here that's got it all together. You can get this from us, biogeneticnutrition.com is another place you can get it too, MQ7. Now, I'm not telling you that, but when you do I'm not treating your migraines, I'm just sharing this information with you. When you're if you're in the middle of a migraine and you're looking for something that will help you, magnesium has been shown to help you. Intravenous magnesium significantly relieved acute migraines within 15 to 45 minutes, 120 minutes, and 24 hours. Oral magnesium significantly alleviated the frequency and intensity of migraines. So if you have an opportunity to get IV magnesium, it has been shown to help within 15 to 45 minutes. The other one is ginger. 400 milligrams of ginger while you're having a headache has been shown to be, in addition to an intravenous drug, ketoprofen, let's see. The addition of ginger to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs may contribute to the treatment of migraine headaches. Yeah, what basically this is saying is that ginger is just as good as your migraine medication a lot of times, but it has no side effects like your migraine medication has. So there's some concentrated ginger extract that you can get, some NCT oil that goes along with that too. And then there's some hormone stuff. So we might carry this over. We're out of time for tonight, but we'll carry this over. We'll carry this over for tomorrow night, and I'll come back and start with this hormonal considerations. So that might be something that you want to do, and then we can talk about some other things if you guys are dealing with migraine. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope you guys have a great evening. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night, and we'll keep this thing going. So have a great evening.